Hello friends and fans, today we'll be taking a dive into the enigmatic game that is Ragnarok. If you don't know, Ragnarok was the mass battle interpretation for the French skirmish game Confrontation by Rackham. Known for its groundbreaking quality of miniature production and design that is considered top of the line even today, set in the captivating and rich world of Arclash, the Ragnarok pits all forms of life against each other in a cataclysmic war, for domination, balance, and preservation. Where Confrontation was typically played with a 400-point team, Ragnarok aims to be played at around 2,000 points. Because of the game's complexity, scale to obtain, along with the abysmally translated and laid out 1.5 edition rulebook, it was not experienced by many out-of-region players to my knowledge. We'll be looking at the rules of play and attempt to show that with a little dedication, maybe it doesn't have to be so complicated. I'll be following through the progressive sections of interest and prerequisites as gone through in my Ragnarok rules summary. You can find the summary at the link below through the Confrontation wiki. Familiarity with Confrontation will prove useful if you hope to venture into the world of Ragnarok, since much of the terminology has similar or identical use. Something I really enjoyed about how Rackham made their cards was how they would include the rules for both games on the same card. So there was no need to separate contents, only the rules. I do not claim to have a ton of experience with Ragnarok. I'm merely an enthusiast and solo tester thus far, so I encourage any corrections in the comments. There is much to go over, so take note and let's begin. In order to play Ragnarok, you will need miniatures with cards, dice and tape measure, a playing surface, the Ragnarok rulebook, order markers, guide sheet, and rules summary, as well as someone as crazy as you for getting into this mess. Shown here are the contents included in the Ragnarok box set. All your markers, the included charts sheet, rulebook and lorebook, and several card packs, including large-scale magic, some extra profiles, and tactics cards, which are an optional inclusion to add some manipulation to your unit's stats. Army creation is very important. You're given a lot of freedom when choosing and pairing your figures, but there are some things to consider in a basic sustaining team. First, you'll want to pick a commander-in-chief. When choosing a commander-in-chief, you'll be aiming for a character with high discipline, preferably one that's ranked 2 or higher. This includes specials, elites, zealots, and adepts for rank 2, masters, deans, and living legends for rank 3, and the elusive chimera of the Lions, only rank 4 in the official game, a virtuoso mage. At the start of every round, your commander-in-chief will roll to receive bonus orders to be distributed to your units. They'll also make all tactical rolls. The tactical roll winner gains a series of advantages throughout the round, one most prominent being deciding who goes first in a series of back-and-forth activations. A commander-in-chief must be a commander, meaning they must have the leadership ability. If a character does not have the leadership ability, you can spend 15 army points to give them leadership 0. Any non-character figure can also be given leadership 0 with a +1 in discipline and courage bonus for 10 army points. All units that include a leader or are within the leadership range of a leader automatically are given 1 order each round. For some orders, units will be required to pass different levels of discipline tests to fulfill them. Any unit within a leadership range can adopt that leader's level of discipline and courage. While under a commander-in-chief's leadership, they even get to roll 2 dice instead of 1. Assigning orders to your units face down is one of the first things each player will do each round after deployment. Red are action orders and blue are reaction orders. Each unit can have up to 2 orders at any given time. This allows them to choose between different actions as well as combine them in special cases. Any unit without orders is automatically given a face-up immobile order. After allotting all basic orders, disperse any of your additional orders as calculated earlier. If a unit plans on taking up missions on its own, it's important to have a means of consistent orders for them. Additional orders cannot always be reliably obtained since they can be valued in many places. Therefore, it is a good idea to give each unit a leader or pay the 10 army points to create one. Independents stipulate essentially all figures aside from your general troops. This includes characters, musicians, standard bearers, and mystics. A war staff is any combination of a leader, musician, and standard bearer. They give bonuses to courage and discipline, and sometimes even fear. So here we are. I've put together a couple test armies of 500 points each. The Griffin of Akalani and the Alchemists of Dirz. The Griffin, though numerically superior, are composed of mostly basic troops, a unit of conscripts with an Inquisitor led by Abel, and a unit of Fusiliers. The Dirz are composed of a detachment unit of Jadorus clones, an aberration and biopsist with Sacia Sumeris. Sacia costs a whopping 213 points, equipped with the Cloak of Crawling, the spell Symbiotic Attack, and the ritual, the Tears of Sarahalna. She was also given Leadership 0 at the cost of 15 points in order to use her as the Commander-in-Chief. To begin, we must sort our armies into card packs for each unit. A great way of keeping track of your whole army is to use an army sheet like this, which can be printed out of the rulebook or from the PDF. This sheet puts all your necessary information into one place: units, stats, abilities, and artifacts, life, and combat dice. With this, you wouldn't even need to look at most of your cards. So, for the Griffins, we have 2 card stacks for their 2 units, and the Dirz, we have 3. This game will be using the interception deployment zones. Now we will make the first tactical roll for deployment. Sacia rolls a 1, an automatic failure, and Abel does not, so the Griffins will decide who deploys first. This is referred to as having the lead. The player with the lead can choose to act or force their opponent to do so. The Griffin player decides to force the Dirz player to deploy first. The Dirz player places their first unit card stack upside down in their deployment zone. Back to the Griffin. With the unit inferiority to the Dirz having 1 less unit, the Griffin are allowed 1 refusal to act. They use the refusal here, forcing the Dirz to place their second card stack. Now the Griffin must place a card stack, and the remaining stacks are placed. Scouts are always last to deploy and can deploy anywhere as long as they are outside of the movement range of your opponent's units. The player can also choose to reserve a unit instead of placing them. This can only be done with up to 20% of their army. They are placed aside and can enter the battlefield at a later time. At the start of any round that they wish to enter, the unit must succeed a discipline test. What zones they can enter changes as the game progresses, and depending on the deployment used for the game. If they fail to enter, they can try again next time with progressively easier difficulty. But if an army is wiped off the board before they can enter, the battle is lost. Reserves have no actions in the game until they enter the field. Once all card stacks are placed, both players reveal and place the corresponding units relative to their card stacks locations. Now we can begin the main cycle of phases of the game itself. Here are all the phases. It may look like a lot, but many of these are not relevant unless you're using certain features in the game. We can easily cross out phases 1, 2, and 6 for now, and if we're not playing using range units and magicians, we could also cross out 4, 7, and 9. That leaves the 3 core phases being Order Attribution, Movement, and Combat phases. So we start with Order Attribution. Being a leader, Abel allots 1 automatic order to any units within his leadership range. The Fusiliers are too far away, so only the conscripts are given a free order. Sacia Sumeris with Leadership 0 gives a free order to herself and the Biopsist. Abel rolls a 2. Adding 6 from his discipline, totaling 8, as a rank 1 commander, he gains 2 extra orders to place freely this round. Sacia rolls a 5 plus her 5 discipline, totaling 10 as a rank 2 commander. She gains 3 extra orders this round. Orders are distributed and placed. Sidetrack. Double-edged sword with rule sets. Since Ragnarok was released during the transition from 2.0 to 3.0 confrontation and never received a direct update, all cards from both versions are allowed to be played, besides a short ban list found in the rulebook. A hurdle, however, is the need to learn entirely different functions for same-named abilities used in Confrontation, as well as certain mechanics that are treated differently in Confrontation 2 and Ragnarok than in 3.0. Releasing before 3.0 Confrontation, there are some missing abilities that were new to 3.0. So if you're using figures that came after 2005, they may have an ability you cannot find in the Ragnarok rulebook. To remedy this, an article in Cry Havoc 9 brings Ragnarok versions of these abilities. Thus, Ragnarok is both forwards and backwards compatible. With all orders face down, I quickly assess mana and manage mutagenic points for the Dirz units. Mutagenic points are dispersed at a multiple figure rate as opposed to Confrontation. Bothersome as it may be to learn another version of mutagenic, I only had to read through the ability once in order to wrap my head around it, and even found it to be a simpler version as the game moved forward. I assign a mutagenic point to the aberration in Jadorus clones. Since Sacia won the tactical role, she chooses who activates their unit first. Since there are no rapid fire orders and there is no desire for rapid incantation, we move on to the movement phase. Sacia asks the Griffins to make the first move. They refuse. Sacia reveals a run marker. Since her unit is a detachment, being under 5 figures, her unit does not need to make a discipline test to perform it. If she did need to, the test would be done using the biopsist's discipline, since a unit of only independents uses the lowest of their values. However, Sasya would transfer her discipline since she was given leadership. The biopsist being not as fast as Sasya will need to slow down her potential movement to accommodate for him, unless the unit was to divide, though it is not possible with the biopsist's low value and an inability to be alone. But let's not get lost in the minutiae so soon. To aid in the fluidity of unit movement, you're given several options under the selection of maneuvers. A quarter turn comes free before or after movement. In this case, Sasya's unit is able to move through the Jataras, since they are a detachment. The Fusiliers activate a move and fire order and march forward up to their movement value. The Jataras clones activate a run order and take the center. Abel's unit of conscripts has a counter-reception order and a run order. They use the run order, succeeding the test and move up to at least their movement value. Last, the aberration reveals a charge and run order and decides to charge the conscripts, creating a fray and making use of his brutish charge ability. With a lower domination factor than the unit, however, it does not inflict a charge penalty. Whenever a unit is charged or engaged, it loses all of its order markers. Being a creature with fear, Abel's unit makes a courage test and passes it, thus becoming immune to that level of fear, like in confrontation. There are extensive rules on fear you will have to look into for yourself, should you choose to use them. The Fusiliers will now carry out their firing at the Jataras clones. Since they are still in close formation, only the front 2 lines can fire. In scattered formation, the front 3 lines are able to. A test must be made if you want to change formations. 6 aim tests are made with a difficulty of 4 for short range, plus 2 for using a move and fire order and targeting a detachment. The Fusiliers with an aim of 3 are looking for 3s or higher in order to hit. 3 shots are hits. Now we must test for damage. At this time, the Jataras make use of their mutagenic die and roll a 4, choosing to add 4 to their resilience for 11 total. Damage rolls in Ragnarok are done with 1 die instead of 2 in confrontation. With the difference of the Fusiliers' strength 6 bullets to the Jataras, now 11 resilience, we'll be looking at the -5 column. Rolling a 3, 5, and 6, we can see the Fusiliers successfully landed 2 hits with the 5 and 6, despite the increased resilience. The Jataras, having only 1 life each, lose their front 2 members. With the combat between the aberration and the conscripts, we will begin an exchange. The 2 profiles start with an initiative test. The aberration rolls his mutagenic die now, acquiring a total of 6 mutagenic points, and decides to put 1 in initiative, 4 in strength, and 1 in resilience. The aberration easily wins initiative. The conscripts with the combined 2 dice place both in defense. The aberration sets a difficulty of 2 and of course goes all attack. 3, 6, 6 is rolled on the attack, for 3 successes of level 9 attack. If this confuses you as a confrontation enthusiast, it's because, in 2.0 and Ragnarok, attacking has a rule where you must choose to set the difficulty level to surpass. Then that level is defended for each success. The conscripts with only 3 defense need to roll 6s. They get a 1 and 3 on defense. It's no good. Proceeding with the damage roll, the difference of strength and resilience lands in the +7 column. Only 1s will not kill. No 1s are rolled, easily slaying the 2 conscripts. After all combats in a fray are ended, something called the combat outcome is assessed. If one side suffered more losses than the other and also has a lower domination factor, they must undergo a special courage test. Since the conscripts maintain a higher domination factor, they will not need to make the test here. Finally, the aberration makes a thrust movement further into the fray. The magicians make a mana recovery roll, subtracting the reserve from their result, a 2.0 in Ragnarok rule, and we return to the tactical roll and order attribution. Abel gets 2 extra orders and Sasya gets 4. Orders are assigned as well as mutagenic dice. The Fusiliers reveal a rapid fire order marker, taking shots at the Jataras clones again, before movement can be made. With an increased difficulty of 7, they will need 4s or higher. Only 2 shots hit. The Jataras clones roll their mutagenic, this time adding 5 to their resilience. The 2 hits will be read in the -3 column. The Jataras survive unscathed. Sasya initiates the Tears of Sarahalna ritual during this phase, targeting the area that consists of the conscript unit and the aberration. Further use of her orders are negated this round, and the mana is spent up front. The ritual requires at least one acolyte. The biopsist is there to serve this purpose and contributes his 5 mana to the cause. With the lead from winning the tactical role, Sassia decides to make the first move, engaging the Fusiliers with the Jadderis. Nothing of worth further occurs in the movement phase. The aberration had a pursuit reaction marker in case the conscripts would for some reason wish to retreat. The ritual comes full circle, entering the incantation phase. The mastery is improved, spending an additional 3 gems to roll 4 total dice on the test. Sassia will need to roll a 6 to pass the 12 difficulty, and she sure does. Every figure in the area, including the aberration, will suffer a damage roll in the -5, -4 column. 5s plus will result in a wound. 5 of the 10 conscripts quite literally bite the dust, and Abel and the Inquisitor both receive wounds. Because of the Fusiliers' rapid fire, they cannot participate in hand-to-hand combat, meaning they can't attack in any way whatsoever. The Jadderis set a difficulty of 3 on their attack, landing 1 hit. With poor defense, a Fusilier falls and a thrust movement is made. Backpedaling a bit, I gave the Inquisitor a chance to cast his incandescent chastisement spell now, though even spending all of his mana, the incantation fails. I also forgot to apply the run order for Abel's unit, allowing them to further encircle the aberration. Now the aberration will be facing multiple profiles. The aberration gains 5 mutagenic points from a roll, putting 2 in initiative, 1 in attack, and 2 in strength. Dirz, being the tactical roll winner, chooses the first combat to be with Abel. Rolling a 1, the aberration auto-fails his first initiative. The aberration goes for an all-out attack, 2 in attack, 1 in defense, while Abel will attempt both an attack and defense. With a 4-set difficulty of Abel's attack roll, the aberration must pass a defense roll difficulty of 8. Rolling a 2, the attack hits. With a difference of 3 between strength and res, Abel manages to land his blow, lightly wounding the beast. With a set difficulty of 2, the aberration lands 2 hits. With a difficulty of 10 due to mutagenic, Abel manages to defend 1 of the hits, rolling a 5. However, in the +6 column, a 6 is rolled for the damage on the attack that hit, dealing 2 wounds, putting an end to Abel the Ill-Tempered. The conscripts proceed to attack, landing 3 hits. 3 failures and a 6 for damage are then rolled. The 6 is rolled up with a successful 5 for a total of 11, causing a double wound, slaying the abomination and avenging their commander-in-chief. With the unit free from the enemy, they can now follow combat with a regrouping. After the loss of their commander-in-chief, the Griffin must also appoint a new one. No leaders remain in the army, so the figure with the highest discipline takes up this responsibility, that being the Inquisitor. Having fallen under 300 points, only 1 mutagenic die can now be acquired by the Dirz army. For the tactical role, Griffin 3, Dirz 1. With no leader, the Griffin only has 1 order which they can give freely this round. They decide to go for the charge on Samaris. Doing so, they fall right into Samaris' trap, a counter-charge. The Initiative 6 test is passed. Now they are no longer at risk of a charge penalty. The 2 units must then oppose each other's initiative with a test. Sassia's unit succeeds again, allowing her to engage the conscripts first. At this point, I also realized I forgot to include Shannis the Shadow among Abel's unit, so I added her to the fray, which is at least appropriate to her character. What I love about assassins is at the beginning of a combat phase, they can be placed into contact with any figure in the same fray as their unit, or trade places with any figure among it. Returning to the Jadderis fray, the Fusiliers lose initiative and place 1 die in defense and 1 in attack. The Jadderis play safe with a set attack level of 2. Both attacks succeed. Low as it is, the 1 defense succeeds and the following damage roll fails. The retaliatory Fusilier hit back, blowing a Jadderis away, even with their hard-boiled ability. Being a conscript, the remaining Jadderis is not subject to the potential fear from combat outcome. The Griffin, having won the tactical role this time, choose to pit the biopsist against Shannis and a conscript, starting with Shannis. Shannis wins the initiative. The cheeky biopsist, being a warrior mage, decides to attempt a counterattack, increasing the difficulty by 2 on himself. With Shannis' minimum succeeded attack level and another +1 difficulty for the biopsist due to Fencer, a counterattack is but a dream. Only 1 wound is given from Shannis' attack. Being a warrior mage, the biopsist has 2 wound levels, but the conscript finishes the job. I have here the card for the Cloak of Calling from Sassia's second incarnation release. In her first incarnation release, her cloak did not have this specific rule for Ragnarok, and her dorsal blade's attack information was only present on her profile card. On this updated second incarnation card, however, you can see that a rule was implemented which only allows her 2 additional attacks instead of 4. But since I'm playing her first incarnation, should I allow her the 4 additional attacks or just the 2? These discrepancies are not so uncommon. It's up to you how you wish to play them, and I and others would be happy to discuss them in our Discord. For playing Ragnarok, I'd try not to worry about this and simply use whatever cards you have available, but if you do have an updated version, I believe it should be used. Before concluding this battle report, I'd like to touch on a few final things. Almost contradictory to what I was just saying, a nice thing about Ragnarok is you no longer have to worry about the ridiculous number of erratas, revisions, and exclusions that came later. In Ragnarok, you are pretty much allowed to play nearly all confrontation content across the board, despite it being a separate game. The old 2.0 spellbooks, banned in the 3.0 rulebook, and cards as they were before the 3.0 rulebook revisions. Probably the biggest exclusion from that would be some spells that have little or no place in the Ragnarok format. But it's really something that many cards served a double function with interesting Ragnarok rules just waiting to be explored. Even experience cards could be used by incarnates who had seen adventures in Confrontation 2. Here we have it, Sassia versus the world. Rolling and gaining 5 mutagenic points, she raises her defense by 3, 1 die in attack, 1 in defense. Conscripts push for the attack with a set difficulty of 3. Sassia declares a counterattack. Only 1 attack lands. The counterattack succeeds. Now with 2 attack dice and 2 separate dice of strength 7 thanks to her cloak of crawling, she uses her remaining mutagenic points for strength. With 1 success in the -2 column, a 4 is enough to put a conscript to bed. Following through with her dorsal blades, the other conscript is shredded to bits. Samaris thrusts forward into the mayhem. In Ragnarok, there are no longer pursuit movements, there are thrusts. The Inquisitor attempts incandescent chastisement, but the mana is absorbed by Sassia's Gems of Darkness. The lone Jadorus finds himself surrounded by a bunch of monkeys, killing 1 before being blown to bits. Sassia Samaris gains 8 mutagenic points, putting 2 into initiative. Choosing her first combat with Shannis, the bonus doesn't pay off. She places her dice into defense as well as remaining mutagenic, announcing 2 counterattacks. A double fail for Shannis, meaning 2 counterattacks from Sassia in the 1 column. 1 wound. 2 more attacks for her dorsal blades, and a rolled up 6 for an 8 to the 2 column causes a double wound, killing Shannis. With no dice left, she must endure the remaining attacks. Receiving 2 more wounds from the Conscript and Inquisitor, I think we can safely call it there. Well, what is there left to say? I hope you found this video enjoyable. You can guarantee I didn't get everything 100% right, but I tried, and had fun doing so, and that's what counts. If you found this video interesting, let me know by commenting or liking the video. Thanks.